All right, everyone, we're back. Hi, Pam. Thanks for joining us. This is one of our noon hour sessions. So I hope if you're watching this, you're grabbing some food, listening in, watching Pam's amazing presentation. This is an excellent session and certainly one that's really crucial in this moment about the role of relocation and building your startup or small company team. And Pam is the VP of Corporate Services and Relocation for WK Real Estate in our area. And I'm so excited that you're here. I'm so excited for this presentation and for people to learn a little bit more about relocation, about our area, what they can do. So Pam, I'm just going to turn it over to you and have you take it away.
Thanks, Morgan. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with everybody today. So I have been working in relocation since 2007. And I'll just put this out there right now. I am not a real estate agent. I am purely a corporate staff employee and my whole mission in life is to help people relocate successfully, individual relocations and job related, and we work with corporations. I've got the CRP designation, Certified Relocation Professional designation from Worldwide ERC, and let's see what else. I was the past chairman and a member of the leading real estate companies of the World Relocation Advisory Council for about 5 years. So I have a lot of experience with, that's what I'm passionate with, and I'm excited to chat with you about it today. So today what I want to talk about is, you all know that getting the right people on the bus is really a priority for any organization, but especially important for a startup where that perfect fit of skill set and culture and personality has to really be optimized because you are a small organization. But what if that person lives out of the area? Relocating can be really expensive. It can be complicated, not to mention super stressful for everybody involved. And there's more people involved than you think. But it doesn't have to be a deal killer in terms of getting that right person on your bus. So today, my goal is for you to take away some relocation basics, to learn how small companies can have some value-added relocation services during that talent acquisition and new employee onboarding process. So we're going to do this by talking about the why it's important to have a policy or at least be aware of it, what it's all about, who we're dealing with, the people, and some tips on how to succeed in this process. I'm going to reference a lot of studies and surveys during my talk today. I do extensive research and reading constantly, and I'm happy to send out the links to anything that I talk about to anybody who wants them. So first, we're going to talk about the why having some kind of relocation policy is important. It's important if you're hiring out of the area, benefits of having a skeleton relocation policy, importance of relocation as a first impression, and what does the data and the anecdotal evidence and commentary about the relocation process tell us. So again, referencing one of the first surveys, Atlas Van Lines, all the major van line companies work with corporations and work with employee relocations. And so they collect a lot of data. And in their study, especially I'm referencing their study from 2018, they found that a lack of local talent was the #1 reason why people were relocating for a position. So it's really necessary for businesses to have that relocation policy and a program for talent acquisition because of #1, that lack of local talent. It allows you to broaden your search for the right person to put on your bus, and it removes that barrier to providing finding the best fit. So some benefits of having a policy are, first of all, retention. It creates some loyalty right off the bat, at least in the short term. It's a differentiator because maybe your competition isn't thinking about this and you're all competing for the same talent. We all know that. And the relocation offerings can often be the deciding factor. Productivity. The smoother the relocation process goes, the faster that employee is going to be ready to deliver their skills and experience that you hired them for as soon as possible on the job. It provides a really unique opportunity for you to reinforce your company's values or your personal value. If you're a startup and it's just you, what's important to you? And hopefully one thing that's important to you is your people. Your people are your biggest asset in any organization, and you need to take care of that most important asset right from the get-go. So first impressions are everything. This is their first experience with your company as an employee, this relocating. So getting from A to B has got to be as smooth as possible. There are going to be hiccups along the way. That's just inevitable in any relocation. But to try to set it up for success is really important. It's demonstrating to them that they're really valuable to you. And it's, again, providing an opportunity for you to reflect your company culture and your personal values and set the tone from the very beginning of their experience with you. So I'm going to reference another study here. A relocation company, and we'll talk about those later, called Altair Global, does what they call, every year they do one or two of these, what they call momentum surveys. And they did one back in 2016 that was really, really interesting. They surveyed, I think, like, of more than 1,000 employees to determine what activities affected them most and affected their productivity at work during the relocation process. They grouped those into high impact activities, those that would cause somebody to lose 3 or 4 days worth of productivity at the office, and low impact activities, those that would cause less than 3 days. The average employee experienced at least 6 high impact activities. So I'm good at math, but 6 times 24, 6 times 4 days worth of lost productivities is 24 days. Who can afford to lose 24 days of productivity at, a high level salary? So here you can see are some of the top reasons that the employees cited for why they lost productivity. And if you look at my numbers there on the right side, there, of the top 6 reasons, 5 of those were relative to their relocation experience. Number 4 was more work-related, adapting to their new environment. But as you can see, we're not going to go through each of these, but clearly the relocation experience has a very profound impact on initial productivity there. What they also found was that 48% of employees don't return to normal for 2 to 3 months, and an additional 33% could take 4 to 6 months to get to their maximum productivity level. In a small organization, in a startup, oh my gosh, you need to get these people working as quickly as possible. It could, for large organizations that relocate a lot of people, this lost productivity can equal millions of dollars. For a small organization, it's not going to be millions of dollars, but it's going to be a significant part of your budget. And so it's very important to pay attention to. What they also found from their surveying of these employees, there were a lot of soft issues, things like that could have been addressed ahead of time, like job training and onboarding, helping adapt to their new environment, both socially and at work, settling into their new community, managing family issues, managing financial issues, and the transition of their household. All of those things were things that were impacted by the move that were important. Another study, another van line, they do, like I said, they do studies. This is just a little simpler view of some challenging parts of relocating for a job. And if you look at the top 2 here, finding a home and getting acclimated to a new community, that accounts for over 60% of the challenges in relocating for a job, and split between men and women. So it's really important to address these things up front. So let's talk about the what. Who would the players be that are relevant to you as a small business owner, and how can you find assistance with this process? What's all this going to cost? Ballpark. And are people? We're going to spend a teeny bit of time talking about COVID. Are people relocating during COVID? And where are people moving? And what is relocation like in Colorado? What's attracting people to come here? And are there challenges to moving to Colorado? And there definitely are. So let's talk about the people. How can you find help with this? And I'll come back to this at the very end. But in my opinion, there's 4 different sources you can go to for assistance. The first would be relocation management companies, and I've referenced them already in some of the surveys and studies that they do. These would be large corporations that assist other medium to large corporations. So, like, for example, Google, they opened their big office here in the Boulder area a couple of years ago, and they use a company called Plus Relocation. And Plus Relocation manages all of the policies and benefits and vendors and everything that's involved in a relocation. You could work with a real estate company that has a relocation department, like mine and a couple of others in the area. You might have an individual realtor that you know who you could count on to assist with this. Or some companies might have an internal, somewhere usually in their HR department, an employee who's kind of going to take on the heavy lifting with all of this activity. Regardless, if you use one of these outside sources, the relocation company, the real estate company, or the realtor, you should ideally have somebody who's a CRP, Certified Relocation Professional. That organization should be a member of Worldwide ERC, the Employers Relocation Council. And if you're dealing with a real estate company, you would want their relocation director to be a member of the Relocation Directors Council and or the Rocky Mountain Relocation Council here in the area. So those are their kind of players. I'm going to blaze through this really quick, but average cost, this is astounding and you would be just concerned with new hires. A new hire homeowner, it's going to cost them $70,000 to move, and a renter almost $20,000. Are you, the company, going to be bearing all this cost? No. Maybe you'll be bearing part of it. Ideally, you should, but this is just ballpark about what it's going to cost. So you can see sort of the magnitude of what we're talking about here. Let's divert a little bit and talk about COVID, because a lot of what I'm talking about, could be thrown out the window in this new environment. But so we can't talk about relocation without addressing at least about how COVID is affecting employee mobility and personal relocations in the world. And we'll speak a little bit about it from a tech perspective. And I put a photo here of the San Francisco Bay Area up for a reason. Before the pandemic, housing shortages in the Bay Area and other high demand locations had become a major barrier to not only innovation, but economic growth. Similar, Silicon Valley and other regions are facing a different challenge now, the sudden spike in remote work. The American Enterprise Institute's Housing Center did a study and said that areas that are less dense are seeing a spike in home sales, while more dense areas are seeing a decline. And this is holding true in areas like San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, New York, Boston. An exodus of engineers from the Silicon Valley area could prove beneficial to smaller communities and or cheaper parts of the country. We know we're a smaller community. We are not cheaper, we know that. Is this the end of Silicon Valley? Well, it's a kind of a tantalizing prospect for all of the people who live there, who have had to deal with long commutes and skyrocketing prices and all of the effects of the area. So apparently, according to this survey, 2/3 of Bay Area tech workers would consider moving permanently if they could continue either working remotely or if they could find other employment. So Silicon Valley's loss could be our gain here in Colorado, and we'll talk about the attraction of Colorado in a minute. Just a little note here about this little box down on the bottom. Another relocation company that I work with frequently called AIRS, they surveyed recently, they've been doing a monthly survey during COVID, and their most recent survey, beginning of July, I believe, said that 90% of the companies that they work with are finding that people are still accepting relocations and assignments at the same rate that they were before COVID. So COVID isn't affecting the corporate relocation activity that much. I do think that this is going to be a turning point for humanity, for us as people make decisions about where they're going based on things like public health, what's happening in a different area, availability of healthcare, proximity to food supply, cost of living of a new area, and what economic opportunities there are. So that's kind of all I'm going to say about COVID. That was a lot. So we're going to go quickly through talking about domestic mobility. Again, this is another moving company, United Van Lines. They do a survey every year of all of their corporate relocations in and out. And so as you can see here, the little key, the blue states are where people are moving moving into, and the yellow states are where people are moving out, and the gray is neutral. So Colorado is definitely considered neutral. I think that's probably surprising. Some people might think that feels like lots of people are moving to Colorado, but we actually have more people moving out than you realize. Why are people moving to Colorado, and who are these people? Well, a lot of people are moving into and out of Colorado for job-related reasons. Who are some of these people? Well, a lot of those people that are moving inbound to Colorado are millennials. Smart Asset is a really great financial website. They have lots of good infographics and statistics and studies. And they reported that very recently reported Colorado is number 3 for states where millennials are moving in. And if you're looking for young tech talent, you want those millennials. They also do a city report, and they did not have the Denver area in their top 10 in their city report, but another organization called Lending Tree, which is an online mortgage company, they did report that Denver was in their top cities, ranked number 4 out of 50 metro areas, with 55.3% of mortgage requests coming from millennials in the Denver area. But our area, it's not all roses here. We have some bad press that we have to contend with regard to some of the challenges that we have living in the area. This was from a Denver Business Journal article in December of 2019. And this headline attracts our ability to attract talent to either come to or stay in Colorado. So it's really important to have an understanding of the housing dynamics, or at least partner with somebody who can help with that. Adam Data Solutions, they do a lot of studies about home buying in the area and home affordability, and they do a quarterly home affordability index. The Denver area comes up on the top a lot of lists of areas that are unaffordable. In the first quarter of 2020, the home prices in the Denver area were unaffordable for 66% of wage earners. And then in the second quarter, it actually transitioned to a little bit more affordability. So 49% of US counties are now considered affordable for median wage earners. But what does that look like locally here for us? Well, let's see why people are moving here. People are moving here for tech. Here's another study. We'll talk about the affordability in our specific area in the next slide. But so Colorado is deemed as a top tech region. So we are attracting a lot of tech talent here. The 3 little buttons you see up here were Denver, Boulder, and Colorado Springs. Colorado is the 5th fastest growing state in the country, according to the census. That was pre-COVID. And once upon a time, if you wanted to have a career in technology, you had to be in Silicon Valley. But like we discussed, the industry is evolving. A new generation of workers is placing more emphasis on quality of life. And so new tech hubs are popping up around the country, and Colorado certainly wins out when it comes to quality of life. So here we move back to affordability. And as you can see from this chart, it's frustrating for people that move here to Colorado, hoping that they can afford to buy something. We're certainly more affordable than the Bay Area, but not according to US averages. So unsurprisingly, Boulder County, and these are counties, was the least affordable county in the Denver metro area. So that means that an average wage earner who earns $73,000 and change, if they want to buy a median price or average price home at $554,000 in the Boulder County area, it's going to require 49% of their income. Kind of a recommended amount of your income to spend on your housing is 28%. So we're considerably more expensive. The report that they did, this company, Adam Data Solutions, did not include Broomfield County, so I don't want anybody to think I left that out on purpose. Overall, in aggregate, things are looking better. These numbers are going down slightly for US workers. But anecdotally, I just put this down on the bottom of the table there. Marin County in California, average worker doesn't make that much more than they do here in Boulder County, but the average pro home price is 1.2 million, so they need more than 100% of their annual income to afford a house there. So there's other problems in Colorado, and specifically in our area, Boulder County, that are challenges to getting people to relocate here. Traffic is one of them, and if we have time later, I'll chat about that. But on the positive side, our area is really stable. This same organization, Smart Asset, does every year a study of the top housing markets for growth and stability. For 5 years, ending in 2019, Boulder, Colorado, the greater Boulder area, which includes Longmont, had been the #1 most stable housing market in the country. We dropped to #3, but we're still in the top 10. Fort Collins there at number 6, and they used to be they came in at #4 last year, and Denver was #8 last year, and they've fallen to #35. Also interesting to note that Cheyenne, Wyoming, was in the top 10 last year, and I think they're #11 this year. Why is Boulder County so stable? You can see from this chart here, this is housing stability, home prices. We just don't have a lot of dips. Even during the big recession, we just didn't have, you can see this little gray area here, just did not have a huge dip. So very, very stable housing market here. But not everybody's going to want to buy a house. A lot of people rent, and we do a lot of assisting of renters. Rents are staying pretty stable in the Boulder area, decreased slightly in the city of Boulder compared to this same year-to-date last year. Prices in Longmont, interestingly enough, up about 3.5%, and all the others are pretty stable, going up slightly, just under 2%. But interesting to note that in Boulder in 2019, we were one of the 10th most expensive rental market in the country. So again, something that we have to contend with when we're trying to recruit talent. So let's talk about that talent. Who are these people that we're relocating? Who are all the players in a relocation? What makes it different than hiring somebody locally? What sort of challenges are they going to be experienced? And different levels of employees have different needs. So we'll talk about that, and especially we'll talk about dual income families. So we often think that you're just dealing with the employee. That's typically, if you're the person that's hiring, you're just dealing with the employee. But there's a lot of other people that have a stake in the relocation being successful. The spouse or partner of that employee, certainly. They might have children. They might be relocating with elderly parents or leaving them behind, and that's complicated. If they're transferring within an organization, which wouldn't be the case with a startup, but with an existing company, they have their current boss that they're still responsible for. They have their new boss that they're going to work for. They have somebody in HR who's they're dealing with. If the company is using a relocation service, they've got the consultant or the point of contact there, and then they've got the realtor, the mortgage, the title company, the moving company reps. They've got a lot of people that they're talking to. So there's more than just the employee that has a stake in what's happening and that it goes successful. They're very different than a local hire because they're unfamiliar with the area. They've got to either get out of their lease or sell their house in their origin location. They've got to find a new place to live, to either rent or buy in their new location. They're trying to do it within a limited time frame. And it's just a really stressful process. So they have a lot of different stressors than somebody who you might hire locally. There's a lot of emotional challenges. So they might have children or a spouse that are really upset about the move and not happy, not wanting to do it, especially if the kid's in high school. They might be concerned about duplicating their current lifestyle. If they're moving from Wichita, Kansas, which I did help a company relocate a fair number of employees to Wichita, to here, the cost of living is much higher and the housing differential was significant. So that was a big stressor. So lots of financial considerations. They're nervous about doing well at their new job, and they're wondering, is this a good move in the scope of my whole career? And I'm leaving friends and family behind, and my kids are going to be freaking out, and my spouse has a job, and how are they going to get a new job? And they might have elderly parents. So new hires are definitely different because there's a lot of emotional factors involved. And now, Morgan, I'm going to ask you to cue up the next slide here, the video. We couldn't get the video to work from my end, so Morgan's going to take care of that for me right now. It's a 2-minute video, and it'll give you a little bit of insight into the emotional aspect of moving. Hopefully Morgan's working on that.
Yes. Promotion in California. I cannot believe it. We're moving to Palo Alto. I cannot.
Uh-oh, we lost the audio there.
The soccer mom,
Did we? Oh no.
Yeah.
It is an unsuccessful stream today. Sorry, folks. I guess we've lost the audio.
All right, no worries. This is a really great little 2-minute trailer video of a longer video that's done by a relocation company called Plus Relocation, and they're the company that Google uses, and I work with them extensively. And anyway, I will be happy to send the link out, but it's a mom basically talking about that her husband got this new job in Palo Alto, and she's thrilled. She has a teenage daughter who says, "You're ruining my life. I'm not moving." And so she has that to contend with, and an elderly mother who's ill, and the realtor's coming in telling her she's got to depersonalize her house, and the husband is working in the Bay Area already and can't come home, and it's very stressful. So she does a really good job of kind of impersonating what that impact is. So I'll be happy to send that link out later. So moving on, okay. Moving on. So another relocation company called Urban Bound divided up the types of employees into 3 different levels and discussed like how relocation is different for those different types of employees. So entry-level employees. Not to disparage anybody, but they may be lacking some life skills to take on the complexities of a move. And having just relocated a 24-year-old daughter of mine to Washington, D.C., and a 26-year-old son of mine to Washington, D.C., just by coincidence, they're both moving for different reasons, I can attest to that first one being true. Their primary concerns are going to be finding housing and maybe some furniture. They're going to need a lot of help choosing a rental, because they're probably going to be a renter, and finding roommates. And I can definitely attest to that. Me, with all of my relocation contacts and my years of experience, it was still a really difficult, stressful experience to get my daughter settled into a rental in Washington, D.C. with roommates. So definitely this type of employee can definitely use a lot of guidance, and you're going to have somebody who's willing to do that for sure. The next level would be mid-level managers. The primary concern of this group is their spousal employment. So they are relocating with a spouse or partner, and could be, if their spouse or partner can't find a new job in the new location, that could mean a significant loss in income from them. They're often married with children. They've got a home to sell. They want to find a new one, either to rent or to buy. They've got to get their kids in school. This group of people needs relocation support for sure. And they will rely on you as their hiring manager, or somebody, an HR person in your company, or your relocation point of contact, to be a true resource and a sounding board for them. And then the next level would be your C-suite executives. They often have families, they have expensive homes to sell, and they're looking at maybe buying or renting an expensive home in their new area. They're going to need a lot more attention, a lot more kind of concierge level service. They're very concerned about neighborhoods, schools for their kids, often private schools sometimes, and they are definitely going to rely heavily on that single point of contact person for their relocation to make sure that it's going smoothly. I recently relocated an executive with a local company that everybody knows. I'll just give you a little hint there by showing you the back of my phone. But his spouse did everything from a distance. He was commuting back and forth, and there was a lot of pressure on him when he was here in the area without them before they moved, to try to help solve some housing issues. And he relied on me pretty heavily as a resource. I alluded to the dual income families, and this is really an important kind of thing to just spend a minute or two talking about. 60% of couples who are relocating are dual income. And so the financial burden of giving up one partner's career can be really significant. A couple of different relocation groups have done studies. Back in 2015, one of them determined that it took 32 weeks for a professional to find a job. And if you use that average base salary of $71,500, you're looking at over $48,000 of lost income to a family. That's significant. Another recent study that was done said that if somebody doesn't find a job in the first 4 weeks, it's going to take at least 15 weeks or more for them to find a job, and during which they'd be unemployed. And that, again, is a significant amount of time, which translates to a significant amount of income. And that financial loss can cause a lot of stress that's going to trickle into the workplace. So what one organization I work with has done to address that is the CU College of Engineering and Applied Science. They looked back on prior years of recruiting activity and found out that they were losing some good candidates for two reasons. Number one was that a lot of academics are married to other academics or have a spouse partner who's another academic. And so they needed to do a better job finding that spouse partner a job within the CU system. The second most important thing that they were lacking was relocation assistance. It was very much DIY. So they developed a program. They have some in-house people handling the spouse partner employment, and they have my company helping handle the relocation piece of it. And they're really pleased with the difference it's made in their capture rate of their candidates. 83% of companies say that the impact of a spouse partner employment is significant. So it's definitely something to pay attention to during that talent acquisition process. Sometimes it doesn't work and people will decline the offer. And this is just a brief slide showing, why people might turn down jobs. And the orange arrows are things that you can do something about during that talent acquisition process by providing resources and providing information. This is just a brief a little bit of humor because I've talked about the stress and how different it is to relocate somebody for a job that's coming from out of the area. And so when they get connected with a realtor or somebody who's helping them with a rental, that person ends up becoming their new best friend. And so you can read here. I can definitely attest to, again, I'm not a realtor, but I do a lot of counseling over the phone with relocating professionals. And I have hung up after an hour plus phone call, definitely feeling like I should have a degree in psychotherapy or something. Perfect example, I have somebody that I'm relocating right now from Switzerland. We're trying to find her a rental, and I've helped with a lot of due diligence with her, and we spent, gosh, an hour on the phone the other day dealing with that. So they definitely need a lot of support. So let's get into the how. Let's start getting into some of the meat of this. How are you going to succeed at this process while you're also trying to kind of keep the cost down? What can a small company do to make it a good experience while also minimizing costs? What are the expenses and that can be expected during the process, and who pays for what, and how does all of that work? I'm going to start off by giving you my top 10 recommendations, and we'll come back to these at the very end, but because we're going to talk in detail about more stuff. But things that I personally think, after seeing my experience since 2007, things that make a real difference is making sure that they have enough temporary housing. Sometimes it takes longer to settle in than you think. Making sure that they have a bonus or some kind of cash allowance to cover some unexpected costs. When you're talking salary with them, you're going to have to make some cost of living adjustments depending on where they're coming from. Professional move. This is something I feel really passionate about. This would be somebody that's going to do a full pack and a full unpack. This is not hiring a U-Haul or a pod and doing it all yourself. But that professional move can make a big difference, and it's one of the biggest stressors that can be mitigated. And then that spouse partner assistance that we talked about, having a plan in place for that. It doesn't even have to be something that you spend money on, but it's something that you just address with some resources that you're able to kind of crowdsource. So how do people manage the relocation process and the cost? Most small companies, there are lots of ways to do it, but I'm going to primarily talk about lump sums because that's how most small companies do it. This is an upfront cash payment that you literally just hand the employee a check, not a blank check, but a check for some set amount to cover their relocation expenses. The majority of companies in every industry group report that they provide a lump sum benefit to their employees. It means that you don't have any control over where they spend that money. And especially with young people, they want to try to save as much of it as they can. They don't want to spend it all on the move. They want to arrive with money in the bank. And sometimes that ends up working against them. But typically, that relocation bonus is a fully taxable component of their compensation. And so they're going to pay taxes on it. So most companies are going to what they call gross up. So they're going to gross up that full amount, pay an additional amount. So for example, you give somebody a $20,000 relocation bonus, you're going to end up giving them, 25 or 28 or 20, whatever, depending on their tax bracket to cover the cost of the taxes. That's we could do a whole nother half hour to an hour discussion on that, but we'll move on. These are some of the categories of things that a lump sum bonus would be intended to cover. I'm going to ask you to look only at the black bars on the chart. This is a study that was done by a company called Air Inc. that does both international and domestic relocations. And the black bars there are what are applicable to domestic relocation. So you can kind of see there, things like breaking a lease, the cost to break a lease. That's something you might not have thought of. Airfare, temporary living, home purchase assistance. These are all kind of things that can be covered by the lump sums. I am not a comp and ben expert by any means. I have no experience in that whatsoever, but I do look at this report every year by Robert Half. They're an employment agency, and they do this salary report. So I've highlighted here for Colorado, you can see, for example, Boulder, and I'm sure Longmont's a little bit less, but still probably more than zero. You're going to have to pay 19% or 19% more salary than average for somebody to move in Boulder. This might not be possible for a small startup organization. But maybe it's something that you can make up. You can't offer them a higher salary, but maybe you've got a little bit of cash and a little bit of leeway to help them out with the relocation bonus. And that could help sweeten the deal and maybe be a big differentiator. This company, Heirs Relocation, that I mentioned before, that I work with a lot. How much is this relocation going to cost? How much in bonus money do people get? So what they did is they looked at the back to the productivity issue. They tied the productivity to the amount of the bonus that was given to see if there was any correlation. Interestingly enough, with this lump sum bonus, as the lump sum bonus amount increased, so did the amount of productivity that they lost. That would seem kind of counterintuitive, like the more money you throw at somebody, certainly it can solve more problems. But really, as the more money that the people got, it was because they were maybe a higher level person, and maybe they had a spouse, partner, or family that was moving with them. A single person moving who's a renter is a lot less complex than a person with a family and a spouse and maybe an elderly parent that has a home to sell and wants to buy a home. So the complexity really has to do with the amount of productivity, and that's why the people who have a more complex situation tend to be given a lot more money to make that move. So from this same survey, all of these people that got these different lump sum amounts, they said they took anecdotal information from interviews to say, like, what would have made a difference? What would have made your move more successful and easier? So the very first thing on the list is central point of contact. This, again, could be the employee that's on your staff. It could be the realtor, a consultant that you hire, the relocation company, or relocation director that you trust. But having that central point of contact to coordinate all the details for them to just call and vent to, that was really important to have. Having local information, they need to have a school guide, they need a rental guide, they need information on recreational activities, how to hook up their utilities, all of those things to help them, and things to help make decisions is really important to have ahead of time. A checklist for what they need to do and when they need to do it, and that vetted list of service providers. So somebody, a home inspector, or an apartment finding service, or it may not have, you as a small company might not have the move volume to obtain discounted rates on some of these types of service, but maybe you can have a partner that does, and then have this point of contact partner in touch early in the process to assist with all that timing and logistics. Household goods, same as the above, versus the employee having to do it on their own. This again was rated as having the biggest impact on employee activity and productivity. So it's often recommended to have this moving component as a separate line item when you're looking at all the relocation expenses. And then housing, this is where a good realtor or apartment finding service can come in handy. And if you are working with somebody, a real estate person who says, well, I can't help with a rental, then you need to find a different person, because that is part of providing full relocation service, is that rental assistant piece. And let's face it, a lot of people want a period of time to settle in before they buy a house and get to know the area, make sure they like the schools, make sure they like their job and your company before they're going to invest in our local real estate. So this is a critical service that too many companies just let people do it on their own, and a little bit of help with that can go a long way. Trips, providing more than one home finding trip to facilitate a quicker decision on whether they're going to accept the move or not. We already talked about the spouse partner employment assistance. And then that last item, so everything on that list except for the last item is something that a good relocation partner can help take off your plate and may not cost you any money. So we have to think about this relocation as, again, part of their employee experience journey with you as a new hire. And it's not just that you want to just get your little body here and get yourself in the chair working, but how can we make this process easier for you? How can we make it less stressful? And how can we mitigate some of the problems that come up along the way? And if you look at it in this way, it can engender more loyalty to you and to your organization. Not going to go through these, but just here's your laundry list of things that could be included in a relocation program that some people maybe are not aware of. Like I think I remember like that I mentioned before, that lease break coverage. Some people might not even think about this, but a good policy, whatever it is going to set very clear expectations about what the employee is going to receive and when and how they're going to get those benefits. Brief mention here of what they call a core flex policy, as opposed to this lump sum handing them the check that I talked about before. This allows some core services that are provided automatically, and then some things that the employee has flexibility on, like a cafeteria, to choose how they want to allocate their dollars. These policies can be confusing. It helps to have an outside party or somebody, an experienced HR person in your organization managing this, but this can be a really good way to minimize relocation costs for everybody. I'm not going to go into this in any detail. Again, this is a whole nother class or session, but when people have a home to sell at their origin, a lot of companies, large corporations certainly, are helping those employees with home sale assistance programs. And these are just a couple of the types of policies. A small startup probably would not get involved in this. There is a way to do it, but it requires some financial investment. So just want to let you know that these things are out there and may not be applicable to you. This is a quote that I wanted to read that was in one of the studies from one of the relocation companies that I mentioned. Companies often mistakenly assume that simply cutting the employee a big check and giving them the flexibility to manage their own move is going to result in a low cost but high impact relocation experience. I don't think it's the impact that you want. But what is missing are the tools, resources, checklists, etc., to assist the employee making sound, educated decisions relative to their move. So I really feel like this is not a place to, it's not a place to cheap out, but it's not a place to cheap out just in the work that you do to set it up, which doesn't have to cost a lot of money. So for minimal cost, you can partner with a relocation company at almost no cost. You can partner with a local real estate company or a realtor who can provide that counseling, the assistance, the referrals to vendors, all those things that are going to be needed. The alternative is that the employee uses cut rate, low cost suppliers, low quality suppliers, that results in them spending more time and money, and then also losing more productivity at the office. And the other thing to think about too, and there's a whole article I could share on this, but your company has a duty of care to the employee to make sure that they don't put their health and safety at risk with a lot of DIY activities. So imagine you've got some liability here potentially. Imagine the employee throws their back out when they're trying to move their big piece of furniture into their U-Haul. What is that going to do to their productivity, and how is that going to delay their quick onboarding? So just kind of something to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is that, if a relocation doesn't go well, again, it's their first impression. And there was a study by two organizations. One's called Intello, which is a software compensation software company, and then the Center for American Progress. And they said that the highest probability for an employee to leave a job is in month 12. So the key issues that they don't feel like enough attention was paid to them as a person and their whole family picture, that it was just all about the job, all about them as a professional. High paid positions and senior executives have a disproportionately high turnover cost. So if you are paying somebody $100,000 salary, it could potentially cost well over $200,000 to replace them. That factors in expenses, their salary that's wasted during the time that they were there, and all the time that the organization spent to try to identify and recruit that person. This is a big hit for any organization, much less a small or startup company. So it's just important to pay attention to this all ahead of time. So in terms of preventing a flight risk, this same study came up with a list of top 10 things that you could do as an organization to prevent that. And again, having a good partner, a good central point of contact, can really help you check off a lot of these boxes. So we've talked about making a good impression. The relocation isn't going to stick if the connections are made too late in the process. And so be preemptive and set the stage for a good, healthy, happy relocation. The support offers support to the family too. Again, there's multiple people that are potentially relocating, and this is where the real retention risk is, because if the spouse is really profoundly unhappy, you can guarantee that they're not going to stay long. Diversity, flexible. People have diverse circumstances, diverse individual preferences. You've got to have your policies be flexible and equitable and transparent to account for those. Neighborhood guidance. This is really important. Again, having just a local resource, a boots on the ground resource for that. Connect them with somebody who can help them find the right neighborhood fit with their lifestyle. This is a super critical piece. And knowing who the decision maker is, the employee might not be the main decision maker, but find out if their ideal world can be achieved in their new location. And sometimes, surprisingly, it's the kid that determines that too. Give them a book. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. There's a really good book. Provide a peer. This is something you can do in your organization, a mentoring program, or somebody else who's relocated, or maybe it's somebody who's a longtime resident who can really welcome them into the community, listen, advise, provide advice on acclimation. Number 7, build a community. Relocating families fare much better when they form really strong bonds with people in their new community and their new organization. So you, as your company, plus your boots on the ground relocation partner, can help make introductions to people and groups and meetup groups and things like that will help them find people with common interests. Offer volunteering opportunities. This is one of the things for any organization to build a really cohesive company culture. So volunteering with other families and other employees can create a real investment in their new community. And then just don't leave them, don't assume that they moved here, they got into their rental and everything's fine. You just have to kind of continue that follow-up. And again, you as a company should be doing that, and as well as your boots on the ground partner here. And then augment your talent acquisition process with that partner who can help kind of take a lot of that workload off you. I promised I'd tell you about this book. This is a great book called This Is Where You Belong. The author is Melody Warnick. And she talks about, she has moved a lot. And that's why she said, she kind of asked herself, aren't we supposed to put down roots at some point? Like, when does a place that we live become a place that we want to stay? So she wrote this book. She did a lot of research about our attachments to places and travels across the country. She interviews lots of people to find out where they live and what makes them want to stay. And I've read this book. I think it's wonderful. It's a very easy read. And what she learns and discusses in the book, I think, will inspire anyone to embrace their own community and perhaps discover that where they live is really their home. So it's in your interest, assuming that you want to retain the employee, to do what you can to help them put down these roots. And this book is just a nice little thing that you could give away. I would be remiss if I did not mention a program that is new to Longmont, called Longmont Start to Home. So this is supposed to be an all-inclusive talent relocation and home buying program intended for intended for recruiting, but also retention of your current employees. It's designed to help them happily settle or stay settled in the Longmont area. And there's a consortium of partners, service providers, along with the Longmont EVP, has kind of organized this program, and it's intended to facilitate stress-free moves from start to finish. So what they get is a dedicated team that's focused on the employee. They get some reduced cost for home buying, lending, moving fees, things like that. They get a lender prepaid credit from the lending partner, and potentially reduced mortgage insurance if that applies to them, some rebates on their real estate closing, and access to an app, which I actually tried the app and I'm not a fan, but there's lots of apps out there. They don't have to use it. And a network of service providers. And then for you as a company, they give you some marketing resources to use internally within your companies and during your talent acquisition process. So this is for only Longmont based companies, but that is available for you. So I've covered a lot here. Want to remind you about my top policy recommendations, things that I really feel like make a difference. And these are very specific things, but that extended temporary housing, making sure that you give them some kind of cash bonus to relocate, accounting for cost of living adjustments in their salary if you can, or maybe sweetening the relo pot to account for that. That professional move, I think, is really important. It's one thing for a 20-something to move their stuff in a U-Haul. It's another thing for a family of 4 to do that. It's tough. And then providing that spouse partner assistant. All of these incentives really work. And then just reminding you again of the different types of assistance that are out there. I'm happy to have an individual discussion and discuss the pros and cons of any of these. And I've worked with all types of organizations. One, just anecdotally, one company called CarMax, that's the car dealership. They have a fully in-house relocation division, and I deal with them all the time when they relocate managers here to Colorado. But anyway, I'm happy to discuss any of these types of options with you, and would be more than happy to take any questions. I know I went fast and I covered a lot, but like I said, I'm happy to share this presentation and all the links to all the resources and surveys and studies that I referenced. And yeah, so Morgan, if there's any questions in the chat, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, yeah, that's what I have for today.
Oh, extraordinary. Thank you so much, Pam. I don't see any comments. I believe you were so thorough. I don't see any comments yet. I'll let, if you have any, please drop them in the comment boxes. Please do send along the slides. We'll have the recording of this available. And if you haven't seen yet, Longmont Startup Week's website has a video archive of all of our sessions. And so when speakers provide slides, we'll throw them on that page as well. And any other resources that you wanted to provide, Pam, I'd be happy to link there so people can have access to them. I don't believe I see any questions coming in yet. So
and it's time too.
I know. Yeah, I know.
We're going over because I have so much I want to say, and I try to cram too much. So I try to pare it down. But
well,
yeah,
I so appreciate it. I learned a lot, especially from a policy level, what companies can do and what they should think about when it comes to relocation and retention anymore, even in this circumstances or economic circumstances right now, but retention of good employees. So Pam, thank you so much for joining us here at Longmont Startup Week. And thank you for your time and insight when it comes to relocation.
All right. Thanks, Morgan. Thanks for the opportunity.